Hi, welcome back. We're going to kind of piggyback off of our last video about why do web designers cost so much money and talk about what exactly is a web designer. We talked about the skills needed, and I'll link that up in the eye in the sky. But for this, I kind of wanted to go into the web team positions and kind of define them for the small business owner. So what is a web designer? I mean, we talked about the skills, but like, what is it that they do exactly? Like, how does it work? How does their position sit within the whole web team, right? So it's a person that designs websites. I'm just kidding. There's way more to it than that. But a web designer is someone that gets the project details from the salesperson, or maybe they're in on the initial discovery meeting and they take their own notes, and which is way better, by the way. If you're only working through a salesperson through a web design agency, try to get the designer to come with, because stuff gets lost in translation and then it just adds to the revision costs. So try to get the person there. But what a web designer does, they take those initial notes, right? I think I'm juggling here and bumping the table. They take the initial notes and they put together what's called a wireframe. What is a wireframe? A wireframe, I will try to put one up on the screen here. It's literally just a bunch of squiggly lines, boxes, and the point of it, while it looks horrendous, the point of it is to establish what elements are needed on a website. So to give you an example, we're talking about headlines and text boxes and how big should those be? And, do you need buttons? If you need buttons, how big should those buttons be? What should their style kind of look like? A designer has to know the site's structure and what kind of content elements are going to be on the site before they can even begin to design it. Because if they start designing it one way, but then later find out there's a whole other content element that might be needed, like maybe you need a sidebar. Well, if you want all the pieces of your site, the sidebar, the footer, the header, the hero graphic, like all those things to play nicely together, you got to know what is going to be on the site. Because otherwise, sometimes designing stuff after the fact, it may look out of place, and you don't want that, right? You want a cohesive, streamlined design that works well together, right? And so it's a lot easier if you know all the pieces from the get-go. So the wireframe helps establish those, because as you work through the wireframe, you'll be like, oh, I totally forgot we're going to have this other segment over here, or oh wait, we're going to add an e-commerce site to the store, so we want to be able to include those products throughout, right? You got to know what those are in order for that to work. So I want to say, like, before you can even get into like the fonts, the color palettes, the layouts, you got to know what's going to be on the site, and the wireframe, like I said, establishes that. So a designer is the person that's going to put that together, or even maybe a UX person, but UX usually comes in, UX is user experience. There's a whole web team position for that person. They'll come in and look at the designer's wireframes and say, oh, you know what, this isn't going to work well for XYZ. Maybe you should put it up here. A web designer cannot be an expert in every single thing. They should know a little bit about everything, because even things like search engine optimization, knowing that helps with creating the correct kind of design. But once the wireframe is approved, like the customer likes it, they're like, yeah, go ahead with that. That works well. Then they're going to go in and create something called mockups. And those are static pictures of what the website's going to look like. That's what you think of when you think of like a designer is giving you something. They're giving you a mock-up. They're giving you a JPEG or a PDF to look at that says, this is what your website's going to look like. And I want you to feel absolutely free to take a red pen to this and just destroy it. Because, at the end of the day, you're the one paying for the site. You want to be happy with the way it looks. And a designer can take that feedback, even if it's super critical, and be like, okay, they really didn't like this, or they kind of like this, but they didn't like this over here. If they give you multiple designs, feel free to mix and match, merge those designs, make it into what you need it to be. The UX person or the web designer or even the developer is going to come back to you and be like, we can't do that because of XYZ, or we can do this. What about this alternative? So don't be shy about completely destroying what they give you, because you'll get a better product in the end. And it works 100% of the time. If you're shy about giving feedback, you may not get what you really want. So feel free to mark them up like crazy. It is your site. So once the designer has your revisions back, and be sure you write them out, because you want something written down. You want to be able to come back and be like, hey, this is, this is what I said to do. You did it or you didn't do it, so make sure you write them down, even if it's just an email. Make sure you write it down. Don't rely on the salesperson to convey it, because they, it's like playing a game of telephone. Sometimes you'll get what you want, sometimes you won't. But once the designer has those revisions, they go ahead and make those revisions, and then they give you back another round of JPEGs, or another round of it's either going to be, it's usually a lot of designers will use InVision now. It's an online app that will let you upload your JPEGs, and then the user can actually scroll through them like they're a live site. They can make things clickable. It's really rather cool. But once that's done, then the designer will take those mock-ups and they will send them off to the developer. And the developer is the person that actually takes those designs, takes them apart, and makes them into code. And then that code is what actually comprises your actual site. Whether they're putting that code into a WordPress site or a Drupal site, or if they're just writing, straight up PHP, HTML, whatever they're doing, or whatever route they're going to make this site live, that's the developer's job. Now, you can find a web designer who's also a developer, me, but usually in an agency setup, those are separate people, because they are identified skill sets, like they are very defined. So once it goes off to code, a lot of times they'll come back to the designer and be like, hey, this doesn't really work for this reason or whatever. So the designer will still work in tandem with the developer to give something that might be found halfway through, or the customer will want a print version to go with the website, like maybe a brochure, or even if they have a conference coming up, they'll put together some kind of like a printout that they can hand out, because you can't hand out a website. You can put it on business cards, so the designer will help with that too. But because the designer has established what's called your style guide, or the company dress, they can take that and create the print documents to go with it as well. So that is what a web designer does. It used to also be called a graphic designer, but now graphic designers do websites. So that's something that's changed like 10 years ago. So that's not news, but that's what a web designer does within an agency and on their own. And that's what you should expect them to do. If they do any less, then you're not getting your money's worth. So that's it. If you would like to work with me, please go ahead and give me a shout out on my website. I do have or if you just want a website consultation, I do those as well. And prices and everything are listed on the website. I'll put a link in the description below as well. As always, if you could like and subscribe, that does help me grow my channel. And if you have questions, I am all about the questions. Put them in the comments. I will respond to you, and we'll see if we can get you sorted in the right direction. And even if you have to end up going, doing like a freebie website or a Wix.com site or Squarespace or whatever it might be, I can even help give you direction on those. Although I haven't used those because I design websites, I can kind of guide you as to, what styles would work better than others, or things like that, just kind of help you get your layout or your structure going. If it goes too long, there is a fee for it, but just to get you started, I'm happy to help you. So just any questions, shoot them my way. All right, guys, that's it for now. Next up is we're going to talk about what a UX designer does, the web developer, a quality assurance person, and an SEO skilled copywriter. And I've got some suggestions about who you can use for those as well. So that's it. All right. See you next in the series. Bye.